everyone. Welcome to the Glow Podcast. I have a very exciting guest with us here today. I have Lisa from OVA Solutions, and I'm super excited to talk to her. But if you are new here, we are Tailored Marketing, and we help healthcare and health tech companies grow their businesses through strategic marketing strategies. So if you're interested, drop a comment below. Lisa, I'm so excited to have you here today and kind of dive into OVA Solutions and all of the things that you help your clients and customers with. If you could, I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself, who you are, and a little bit about your background so the listeners know who you are.
Hi. First of all, I'm so excited to be a guest here. I'm really excited about what you're doing. Love your previous podcast as well. I got a different background from what I'm doing right now because I got PhD in math, so I'm not using it now in my real world.
Yeah.
Well, it helps me to navigate the business decisions right now. So I run an external R&D shop. So basically, we're a group of engineers who are making devices for other companies. And we're focusing mostly on class 1, class 2 medical devices, but we can work on class 3 devices as well. And our strongest part of the team is that all our engineers got either master's degree or PhD in engineering. So we can handle really complex tasks from MedTech world. And we have 3 main focuses, which are wearable devices, orthopedics, and whatever equipment that goes inside of the operation room.
Yeah. No, that's super, super cool. And I feel like, yeah, you and your team, you were showing me some of your products and some of the projects that you've worked on in the past. And it's very impressive, super cool. And yeah, no, it's just amazing. So you kind of began your career in 2015 and kind of pivoted into medical devices in the R&D world. So can you kind of walk us through why and how that transition happened for you?
I should say it was quite a natural evolution because I haven't planned like being solely focused on medtech space. So I worked in a wearable device for seniors care, and I got like really strong mentor, which I admire a lot. His name is Rem Fish, and he back then in actually was I think 2014 if I remember correctly. I might mix up here, so it doesn't matter. He was
That's
working
okay.
on on a wearable device with the multiple sensors because back then optical sensor, which is installed in most of the devices right now, was not accurate enough. So it was not performing on a dark skin, tattooed skin, airy skin. It's not a problem anymore in the modern world, but it was a problem back then. So he was VP of engineering in Samsung, and he was working on a wearable device with multiple sensors. So he got interested in our technology, my first startup, and that actually helped me to understand, like communication with him, helped me to understand that my real passion is to understand biosignals and translate them into, wellness insights, understanding what is happening with the body. Because once again, like back then, most of the sensors were just showing basic metrics and no outcome. So, okay, like I know that my heart rate variability is like that number.
Yeah.
So what, it was really interesting to work on. And after that, we got a team of engineers that was working on multiple projects, consumer electronics, IoT technology, and so on. But I think the last event that made us rethink the entire process and understanding that we want to focus solely on medical devices is that in like 3 years ago, war in Ukraine started, and my entire team is located in Ukraine. So we were absolutely lost, and we understood that, okay, we want to live not in vain. We want to do something that would be useful for other people. So we don't want to do ordinary things. We want to focus on something where we can deliver the most value. So I should say that this was an event that was helping us to prioritize what we want to do with our lives. We understood that if we have a talent and if we have experience, we have to use this talent and experience for something meaningful, because medical technologies and medical devices is not just technologies, right? It's something that would directly affect your life.
Yeah.
And also, we noticed that all our expertise is like in electronics, firmware, whatever, started over this years, like started to shift towards MedTech. So we realized that we are ready for that. So, and now it's just perfectly making sense, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's wild how something so life-changing like what you were talking about, the war in Ukraine, can kind of shape your perspective and make you realize like, okay, what impact do I want to leave on this world? And med tech is something like you said where it is really changing the people's lives that are using these devices. It's helping them to live their everyday lives more normally, really.
Yeah, right. And I'm very excited about it. I think the first wow moment that I experienced was when, like some time ago, one doctor approached our team with the idea of device for rehabilitation, made a prototype, and then we seen this when patients were actually recovering faster using this device during clinical trials. This is the
Yeah.
exact like moment, you know? So, I mean,
Yeah.
of course, we're using technology every day, and I have plenty of things. You know, I have this like smart dynamic at home and other stuff, which is like super
Yeah.
fun to use. But when you have this feeling that something actually affects the life, it's just a life-changing experience. It's like it's the first time you understand that, oh, okay, I've done something that actually affects other people's life. It's very fun.
Yeah, no. And I'm sure working in the health space and technology space too, you've had a lot of those aha moments where you're like, wow, like this is really affecting people. Like I'm making a positive impact in their lives. And so that's super super cool. And so I know at OVA you all have brought about 150 devices to the market. What systems or frameworks do you credit for scaling from concepts to FDA cleared products so reliably? Because obviously within the US, having that FDA clearance is huge.
Well, yes, you know, like we've built over 200 devices by now, and it sounds
Okay.
impressive. But the real story is in what we learned from the failures along the way. And early on, we were making all these like classic mistakes. So we were building this cool tech that nobody actually wanted, or devices that work great in the lab, but then they kind of fell apart in real clinical setup. And
Yeah.
the breakthrough moment came when we developed what I called reality first framework. So we start every project now by spending some time in actual environments where a device can be used. At first it was like very weird. So I was
Yeah.
forcing engineers to come and see how it's supposed to be used. Like because even when you're in a lab and even when you're discussing it in the conference room, you are not getting this feeling. So we are trying to spend time in actual hospitals, clinics, maybe patients' homes, depending on who's gonna be the user. And you know what? You'd be amazed on how many startups are actually skipping this step.
Yeah.
So especially the one with the business background, not like medical background. So they are looking at the numbers, but they are not fully aware of the reality. And some things you can spot only during this experience.
For sure.
Another thing that we implemented this like 3-phase validation system. So first we built what we call ugly but functional prototypes, like just to prove the idea works, the core concept works. Then as a next step, we do real world testing with actual users. So we show it to nurses, to doctors, to patients, to caregivers, and only after that, we worry about making it pretty. Another thing that we have is the one that you mentioned about regulatory. So we are trying to bring regulatory thinking from day one, not just after we build a prototype and specifically not after we have a design for manufacturing ready.
Yeah.
Because this is critical. You have to figure out your FDA pathway in the very beginning. We
For
have
sure.
FDA partners who join our initial strategy calls, and it's way, way more cheaper to design for compliance from the start than like retrospectively, you know, try to fit it later.
Yeah.
So, but you
Yeah.
know, honestly, I think the biggest factor is just being honest about what works and what doesn't. So we're trying to track every project obsessively.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do this, team meetings where we're trying to understand what failed, why it failed, how we fix it. And this knowledge that stays inside of our team, and this is actually, I think, our core asset, because the core team is within us for 8 years already. So
Yeah.
this knowledge helps us just move faster with next project without breaking things.
Yeah, no, I feel like that first piece that you brought up a lot of interesting things, but the first piece with kind of the reality portion of it, like, is this actually usable for people? Like, are they actually going to be able to
Yeah.
use it? What is the real life application with it, and does it work in the setting that they're planning on using it for? Is so important, because it's like you could design this great thing. It could have all the functionalities, all of the working parts that it needs to be successful. But if it's not actually something people are going to be able to use, then what's the point? Because they're not going to be able to use it.
I have one of the examples from real practice that's something that you couldn't predict. It's so simple, but it's just we haven't thought of it yet. When we were designing our first device for surgeons,
Mm-hmm.
so we built a prototype in our lab, assuming how people would use that. And then in the first clinical trial, it actually was a small pilot. It was not a full-scale trial. It was just a test, like to understand how people are using it. We
Yeah.
realized that the light during the surgery is so intense that people are just not seeing what is on the display. And you
Yeah.
cannot guess this. Like, you cannot think of it unless you've been there as an engineer and you've seen how they're supposed to use the device.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's like those little things that you don't think about, that if you put yourself in the setting, you would see almost immediately. But if you're not in the setting, then you would never guess that, because yeah, I'm sure in the operating room there are really bright lights because they need to be able to see everything, but then if the display screen isn't made to specifically match that lighting, then it's going to be messed up. Or if you can't like adjust the screen's settings, something like that, where it is, like you said, it's kind of simple, but you won't see it if you're not there in that setting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
so that's so cool though how that works. And I know your team emphasizes speed, so getting things out for your customers quickly and yet also comply with obviously rigorous FDA practices. How do you balance rapid iteration with strict regulatory demands as well, with making sure that you're getting products out in a timely manner, but then also, of course, still making sure that you're following with the compliance?
To be very honest, this is probably the question I get most often, and that's a great one because it seems
Yeah.
impossible on the surface, right? So, like, how do you move fast when FDA wants to see every single decision documented? Well, the secret here, they're gonna share it, is that regulatory compliance isn't actually slow.
Yeah.
Bad processes are slow.
Yeah.
So when you try to bolt on compliance in the end, as I mentioned before, that's where you get into trouble. But when you design your entire development process around regulatory requirements from the very, very beginning, it actually will accelerate things. So what we usually do, like every sprint, every prototype iteration includes compliance documentation as part of the work, not as like a separate step. And our engineers don't just build the device, they also document their decisions in real time using FDA friendly formats, and we have it already as a part of our processes. It's like writing a code with good documenting, in the software world. It takes a little bit longer upfront, but then it saves a lot of time later.
Yeah.
Another thing that we implement, we run parallel validation tracks. So while we are refining the hardware, we are at the same time doing biocompatibility testing, EMC tests, and all that stuff. So most companies do this sequentially, one after another. So it would add you some months. But some processes you can do in parallel, and whatever we do in parallel.
Yeah.
Another trick that we use here is something that we call regulatory sprints. So instead of waiting until we have a perfect device to start FDA conversations, we engage early with core concepts. Then you can get their feedback and we can still make changes easily, not after design freeze already. And honestly, like, I think for now, I mean, I would guess that we've seen most regulatory
Issues and
issues
stuff.
before, yeah?
Yeah.
So we kind of know which corners you can't cut and which processes you can kind of streamline. So I think also experience is something that you accumulate over time is the ultimate accelerator. So
Yeah.
key here is understanding it's not just that compliance is not an enemy, but uncertainty is an enemy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's like you almost have, like, with creating over 200 devices or almost 200 devices, you have sort of like industry wisdom now or FDA wisdom of like, okay, we ran into these issues before, so we kind of can foresee the issues that could potentially happen with this device so we can catch them from the get-go rather than going to get the clearance and then they're like, no, there's this issue. It's like you've already ran into those issues, so you can almost foresee what could potentially happen.
I would say yes. Have you heard like other opinions on this topic?
Yes, some for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've
So like,
seen definitely with like running into issues with FDA. I haven't heard specifically with like MedTech issues that they've ran into with their actual devices. So what are some common issues that maybe you've seen in the past?
the most common issues, like once again, engage with them later on in the process because just technically it's hard to adjust to the requirements. Simple example, you already have a design freeze. That means that you already have a design ready for manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you receive a letter from FDA where they say, okay, unfortunately, you cannot use this type of plastic for the
Yeah.
casing, for example. You have to redo that. And you cannot just replace the plastic. You have to redo the entire mold system, probably change the supply chain also, because um, the properties of plastic are different from one material to another. Well, sometimes you can easily replace one, but sometimes you can't. And it means that you just lost hundred thousands of dollars and maybe a couple of months of
Yeah.
development just right here.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's almost like I've seen it similarly with like even when you're like mixing ingredients for like say like something for skincare where it's like it's the raw materials issue is like the main issue kind of that you run into with where you're sourcing things like you were saying and really just it's like simple things where it's like if you caught it at the beginning, like you said, it's a simple fix. But if you catch it later on, then it's like you have to change all of these other things with the manufacturing.
Correct.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so in recent interview, you said that OVA helps startups dodge slow, expensive failures. What are the most common pitfalls early stage teams face, and how do you kind of help them avoid these different pitfalls?
You know what's interesting? I think that the biggest killer for the startup is when founder fall in love with the technology instead of falling in love with the problem they're trying to solve. So it's not something that I can help with because we're doing engineering.
Yeah,
And in my opinion, delivering hardware is the simplest part of a MedTech startup.
yeah,
But what I see constantly, someone builds an amazing sensor or like amazing algorithm. They spend years trying to find a market for it. And that's completely backwards. That's not how you do that.
yeah,
And that's gonna kill the startup after all. And another classic mistake is underestimating the business side. So I see that like engineers love to engineer. So they think build great tech, customers will come. But
yeah,
in medtech, you're not like selling to one person, you're not selling to a customer. You're selling to doctors, to nurses, to hospital administration, to procurement committees, to insurance companies, to IT department in a hospital. You know, like each group has completely different priorities.
yeah.
And some startups are failing because nobody figured out who would actually make the buying decision in this, like, entire process. It's also about buying decisions. There's also the reimbursement trap. This one I experienced myself. So together with our client, we built incredible device, got all covered by FDA. And then we applied, the founder, they applied for reimbursement code and received approved new reimbursement code that was $0. Zero. Yeah.
That's
Nobody
crazy.
told them that's even possible, right? So they were not able to fit the solution into existing care pathway, basically.
Yeah.
And as we discussed before, regulatory piece is huge too. So teams burn through the entire runway doing R&D without understanding the regulatory pathway. They assume they're class 1 device when they're actually class 2, or they think that they think they would take 6 months while it makes 18. And then for this 18 months, you have to feed your entire team. And as a startup, is painful. So how do you help here? As engineers, we don't, but we are trying to force these conversations early. So before we actually start developing the device, we trying to map together with the founder the entire ecosystem. We're trying to understand, does the founder has a go-to-market strategy? Does they have an IP strategy, FDA strategy? What is regulatory path? What is competitive landscape? And so, I mean, it's not sexy work, but it prevents companies from building, themselves in the corner.
Yeah.
After all, for a startup, the goal is to fail fast and cheap, not slow and expensive. That's what you want to do, right? So
no, for
we can
sure.
help with this as well.
Yeah, no, well, I love what you said too earlier and just now as well. But I love what you said earlier about one of the problems is that the founder falls in love with the solution or the device or the technology that they've created, but not how they're actually helping the person, the end user. And I think that that's so important because sometimes if you get so stuck on something in business, then you're not looking at the other solutions because you're so obsessed with this thing that you're this is exactly what it is. But it's maybe there's something a little bit different that could be better, or you could make this slight change. And then also the other portion of it too, with kind of more of the business side of things, is there's other things to consider when you're developing a product, especially as a startup, that is going to be really, really important to the actual success of the business long term.
Yes, I agree with you. And how do I know about this mistake? Because I made this mistake in my first startup. I thought I'm the smartest engineer in the world and I have this technology. It's amazing. And then I was trying to fit it into a market.
Yeah. But it's you have to look at the market first and make sure that the technology is actually going to make sense in that market.
Correct.
Rather than doing it the reverse, like you said, because that's where you kind of fall into some pitfalls and make mistakes. And if you get too obsessed, then you're on this pathway and you're so deep into it. It's a long fall, like you said, rather than a quick fall. That's a long fall. And so with your strong momentum in robotics, orthopedics, wearables, and class 3 devices, what are you kind of seeing with where the industry is headed? And are there any areas in the industry that you're especially excited about right now and seeing where the future is kind of headed with that?
Let me think a bit.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Take your time. We can just edit the pause out. It's not a big deal.
So, there's elegant solutions without overcomplicating things. It's actually the hardest part of engineering, right? And I think anyone can make something complex, but making something simple that actually works, that is something where you require actual skill. And in practice, that means that we are trying to use this experience that we have to resist the engineering urge to over-engineer everything.
Yeah.
Not to add features, not to add sensors, capabilities, because I don't know, some engineer thought that more equals better, right?
Yeah.
So it's general direction. It's hard to say that we choose one direction in general. Something I believe in personally is AI in medical devices, but
Yeah.
following the rule not to overcomplicate things. I personally, at least for now, like this year, I don't believe in MedTech devices that are trying to replace the surgeon with AI. I believe in MedTech devices that are trying to help the surgeon, help the doctor with AI. So
Yeah.
I think where the future is heading, and this is like one category of the devices, and maybe I just see that because once again we have expertise in devices that are going inside of the operation room, so maybe I receive requests from such projects, and maybe there are like other trends on the market that I don't see. But another trend would be to figure out what would be the next big thing in wearable devices. So everyone is already like tired from any wrist-worn devices, any rings, like any jewelry, like
Yeah.
smart things, like smart glasses. It's a toy that would like, I don't know, last 3 months and that's it, mostly.
Yeah.
And it's like hard to compete for wrist-worn devices because once you wear something on your wrist, then it's hard to replace this device, right? Because you already
Yeah.
have a habit of wearing something. But new devices that would monitor and, as we said in the beginning, like can give you insights on how to live better for your specific case. I still believe like this market would be huge eventually. And now I see more and more devices that are trying to look like a band-aid rather than a wash or something, so they can monitor what's going on with your body without bothering you, without you
Yeah.
sensing it.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. Yeah, I feel like you brought up a really good point about AI. Like, I completely agree with you. I feel like most of the stuff with AI now, we still need humans interacting with the AI. It can't be AI completely by itself because you need someone overseeing it still and making sure that it's going correctly, even just in business, even too, when you like
Yeah,
put things into
yeah,
chat GPT, you can't expect everything to be perfect at this point.
correct.
So thinking about even like a medical device with just operating solely off of AI would make me personally nervous.
Nervous, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would want a person still overseeing that for sure. And then what you were talking about too with like the wearables and everything as well. Like I know myself, I used to wear an Apple Watch like just for keeping track of heart rate, keeping track of how far I'm walking and everything. And eventually I got tired of wearing it. Cause like I was just like, I don't want this on my wrist all the time. And like even like the rings I've looked at before too. So it's like I think, yeah, you're right. Like integrating it in a way where it's people realize it's on the least basically, because a lot of people don't want to wear something on their wrist or they don't want to wear a ring constantly. They just want something that's tracking and they can look at it if they want to, but they don't have to feel it on them all the time.
the other huge area that I also noticed is something that started before COVID and was accelerated by COVID is hospital to home devices.
Mm-hmm.
So COVID accelerated this trend where, complex procedures are moving out of hospitals into clinics, even homes. But most devices that I've seen, unfortunately, are not designed for this transition. So
Yeah.
I think building something that works in a sterile, like environment, operation room, is very different from building something a patient can use safely in their kitchen.
Yeah.
Right. Talking about AI, it's even ChatGPT like is basically a smart intern.
Yeah.
But just earlier today, I had a conversation with a startup founder, and she doesn't have any experience in tech yet. So it's her first technical product. And she sent me a list of sensors that we can implement from ChatGPT, and I instantly see that that would not work, for example. But I have this experience that ChatGPT does not. So they have like very general understanding of what can be done, and I believe that will remain the same for AI and medtech for a long time, even though it's
Yeah.
not actually my area of expertise. It's just my observation, just to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and I feel like too, a lot of like I've heard even that like the FDA is kind of gonna crack down on some of the AI stuff, that they're very, very skeptical of kind of like what AI is gonna be able to do,
Mhm.
especially from a medical perspective.
Correct. Well, for them, main task is to figure out how not to create extra harm for the patient. So that is
Yeah.
why they're so strict on AI-based devices or software as a medical device.
Yeah. No, and I mean it completely makes sense. Like even just talking like as myself who would be a potential consumer of things, like how I was saying it makes me nervous. Like I'm sure that a lot of people have the same feeling too.
Yes, correct. Well, imagine being operated by a robotic surgery, like by a robotic surgeon completely independently, right? I would be like
Yeah.
very skeptical about it. Or I would hear about my future experience from a doctor who would say, look, we're going to perform a long surgery on you, and we have this robotic assistant, and I would be supervising it. But also, this robotic assistant would make sure that my hands are not trembling, that I can reach out to distant places, and so on. It
You
sounds better.
feel a lot better about it. Yeah. 100%. It sounds a lot better. And even just being able to like talk to the person too, that makes you feel better because you get the reassurance from the person. And AI is not going to be able to give you that same sense of reassurance and that everything's going to be okay as well.
Yeah, correct.
Well, cool. Well, I really, really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I would love for you to tell everyone where's the best place to find you. I know you recently wrote a book as well. So if you want to talk a little bit about your book really quickly, and I'll also include all of the links too in the show notes so that the audience has access to your website, LinkedIn, your book, and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much. So actually, yes, I wrote a book, Hardware Bible, after my experience in Vanderbilt University, specifically because I was tired of watching great teams fail at, preventable mistakes.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find any source of information where literally every step is explained. So my book is called Hardware Bible, Build a Medical Device from Scratch. And I believe that I managed to make it, an ultimate playbook. So now playbook exists. You
Yeah.
know the pathway. Yeah, just go and execute. But somehow every generation of founders think that they're so different that they can skip, some fundamentals. So I try to put it all together in one place. And yeah, best way to reach out to me would be through LinkedIn. I have a link in the bio to book a conversation with me, and I would be happy to give a feedback to any first-time founder or whomever would want my opinion on things. I always answer all my messages, even though sometimes with some delay.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, cool. Well, I will include all of those links in the show notes. And thank you again so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I just wanted to say that hardware is the easiest part of a MedTech journey, because everything else is where the most companies die, but not hardware. So, like, we can handle it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.